Welcome to A Fork in Time, the alternate history podcast.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to A Fork in Time. This is Chris Capola, joined by Alexis. We need to change the last name on Zoom, I believe, but I'm going to let you identify yourself by whatever last name you choose to use right now, Alexis.
Yeah, we do. I just noticed that. Didn't even click to me. Sorry, Jake. I'm still working through a list. But hi, Chris. This is Alexis. Alexis Raleigh now. But I'm happy to be here tonight with you recording.
So I just, we were talking beforehand, and we probably should have recorded that off podcast, that bit. Maybe not. I'm not sure.
Just that last like 2 minutes.
The last 2 minutes, okay. Where we're just completely. As long as we leave out the part where I have to, yeah. Anyway, as most of you who are familiar with the podcast know, if Alexis is here, we're going to the Iberian Peninsula today.
Totally.
Yeah. No, we're going to do one. This is I think this might be like the perfect crossover episode between like what I do and what Alexis does. Yeah, I think so. So today we're going to talk about possibilities related to the Irish Home Rule Act of 1914. So Alexis, do you want to set up kind of the Islander perspective of this, and then I'm gonna come in with, oh yeah, by the way, what else is going on?
Yeah, all that other stuff.
Yeah.
So it's funny because as we were talking off podcast too, so little geography lesson for everybody. We've got Ireland, which at this point we are talking about the entire island of Ireland. Save that 5 times fast. Island of Ireland. But at this point, we are talking about the entire island of Ireland. We will get into the separation in a little bit, especially when we start talking about the name of the title for the episode, which we'll get to in a minute. So we're talking about the island of Ireland, which is, of course, right next to Great Britain. Great Britain is England, Scotland.
Next to Great Britain? It's next to Britain. Britain is the name of the island. Great Britain is the political union that includes the 4 component sections.
Okay.
I wanted people record this, cut out the audio. I got her on one about the British Isles. There we go.
Okay, you did. Okay. So the island of Britain, thanks, Chris. The island of Britain, which includes England, Scotland, and Wales, next to the island of Ireland, and England, Scotland, and Wales, Great Britain, also Ireland. So they are actually at this point the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland until Home Rule comes in, and we have Ireland breaking off into its own country with different ramifications, except for that little bitty part at the top, which becomes Northern Ireland, those 6 counties. So that's the Islander perspective of kind of what we're looking at this period. But of course, we're going to be talking about Home Rule, which means United Kingdom is no longer going to be Great Britain and Ireland. It's going to be something different, and what that means.
So on a constitutional basis, the funny thing is, Home Rule doesn't do anything to its status as the United Kingdom. It just devolves powers to an Irish parliament, which is basically the same as the current constitutional arrangement with Holyrood.
Basically, yes.
So they would still be part of, okay. Well, yeah, here comes my part. they kind of decided to pass this like at the beginning of 1914, and then they went on vacation and the world blew up. Is that yeah. The law was passed, and it was typically one of those things where, okay, we need to make some arrangements, we need to figure out what powers are going to be devolved. We need to figure out, I have really been trying not to refer to a devolved Irish government as Stormont, because that is the name for the Northern Irish government that comes about later.
Right.
But it would not have been in Belfast. It would have been in Dublin. There isn't kind of a name. There isn't a name for this government because it never actually comes into existence, kind of. Right. Because in the middle of the negotiations about how are we going to implement Irish home rule, a driver takes a wrong turn and Europeans just start shooting each other because it seemed like the thing to do.
Fortunately, ironically, I was listening to a podcast about that this morning. That like, oh, it was just a series of wrong turns, and 5 minutes later, the world kind of blew up.
Yeah. So what happened in our timeline, and just to kind of, we're going to jump over a lot of stuff here. Britain gets involved when Germany invades through Belgium, blah, blah, blah. War kind of settles into what everybody's familiar with. Ireland has been promised home rule. It's just been put off, kind of almost dangled in front of the Irish nationalist cause as you play nice and we will give you stuff at the end of it. You have the Easter Rising of 1916, which was really fanatical. I mean, it's really interesting to think about how fanatical these people seemed. Just a nice little touch. Guinness breweries in Dublin donated their brewery tanks to be turned into armored cars for the British forces. That is how, like, Guinness was against this.
Yep. The most Irish thing.
Yeah. You know, if nothing else, I'm kind of the color commentary of the podcast. I bring in these weird little facts. So war ends, and the Irish are sitting around waiting for the check to cash.
Yeah, you promised me home rule. Where's my home rule?
Where's my home rule? And this was another interesting thing that the Irish nationalist, we've covered this topic a lot, but when Britain has to get involved in European continental wars, they wind up training people to use guns that probably come back to bite them.
Fair.
Right. True story. Throwback to the Saratoga episode we were talking about doing even.
Yeah.
Well,
it's also like, I remember side note, but I remember when I was in high school, and it's like, you know, when we have like the line of the proclamation line of, was it 1763? And it's like, maybe let's protect you from the people that we gave guns and alcohol to.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't like that? Okay, so now we're going to go to war, and it didn't go well for Britain.
No. So, okay. War's over. One war's over, I guess we could say that. Irish nationalists come back. The Southern Irish want their own country. The Ulster Northern Irish, who are the majority in those counties because of settlement, they are predominantly Scottish Presbyterians, correct? Who were brought over. I always find it a little ironic to picture Braveheart, the English king, saying the problem with Scotland is that it's full of Scots. Well, The Scots are nothing compared to the Irish. Let's use the Scots to settle the Irish. Speaking of proclamation in 1793, who were the major settlers out there? Scots, Irish. Everything comes back together. This is a beautiful thing. But
also, the problem with Ireland ended up being that it was full of Scots.
Scots, yeah. Man. I want to take a shot at Wales just in case they feel left out right now. Anyway, those counties are majority Protestant. They want to stay part. They want to maintain a stronger relationship with the United Kingdom. What winds up happening is there is a deal offered to the Irish nationalists where you will recognize the British crown as your sovereign, but otherwise you will be given basically dominion status. Picture Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and up until like a couple of months ago, Barbados.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bringing it back to the news.
Yeah, the monarch is just a person on the money.
Yeah.
And they come every once in a while, and you have parties and parades.
Do you want to tell them that the interesting thing? Apparently, when they do come to your neighborhood, you get to give them your own special names.
Yeah. So also off podcast, and this totally relates to something I was dealing with at work this week. Yeah, if you're a member of the British royal family, you have like your official title, and I'm using air quotes that Chris can see, but no one else can see. But then you have like 4 other titles depending on where you are in the world. So that's a thing too. It's what do you call these people when they do show up?
Well, I can think of a couple of choice names if they show up in Dublin around this time. But so you had a split within the Irish nationalist, the group that said, you know what, I don't care who's on the money, we will have our own country, and the group that said this is a complete sellout. This leads to the Irish Civil War, and eventually you have a free state in the South in the Catholic majority areas. You have the Northern Ireland area, Ulster, staying loyal to Great Britain, except it's got a significant Catholic minority. And literally a couple of months ago, the Catholic Party became the largest party in that parliament.
Yeah.
So you're going to hear about this pretty soon, I think.
Yeah, we'll see how that turns out.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. Okay. I just explained the troubles, I believe. Kind of. Yeah. So do you want to talk a little bit about the fork here? What is going to change and is really going to affect like a whole bunch of stuff?
So Chris set up when home rule actually was
passed,
instituted,
yeah,
which was in 1914. We're pushing it, I don't know if you say forward or back. We're pushing it earlier.
Okay. Yes. That's
I don't know
good.
what you
That's
call
fair.
that. Do you call it back in time? It's going to happen earlier, before 1914.
Or even earlier in 1914.
Yes. Way before the war.
Kind of. So, in our timeline, when home rule was passed, there was a borderline mutiny amongst the military in Northern Ireland. The really interesting thing is Arthur Wellesley, he was Anglo-Irish.
Yes, he was.
He was technically Irish. There was a large picture, almost like Ireland was treated like the West to an American, and we're going to send out military figures there to settle it. And a lot of British military commanders were what is called Anglo-Irish. They were British who had land or had grown up in Ireland, right?
Yep.
So when they're about to lose all of that, they're none too happy. And there's rumblings about the British military opening up some supplies to what are called Ulster Volunteers, who are basically Protestant militiamen who want to fight against an Irish nation because they want to maintain those close ties with Great Britain.
Mhm.
You also have the nationalist side, which sees all of this happening and is very nervous because it looks like they finally, through through legal parliamentary means, they finally accomplished their goal, and now they're about to have that rug just pulled out from under them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is, if you move this up a couple of months, like I said, maybe not even out of the 1914, just move it a little bit earlier, you had a mutiny and you could have had in effect, civil war within the British Empire. Is that a fair statement?
Completely fair. Yes.
And so let me just take this back to the other thing that, is going on at this time. Why you have a gap. Why the Eastern Rising is 1916, 2 years after Home Rule has already been passed, because World War I intervened.
Right. It was that we let you have, we passed this. We're figuring out the details. Just give us a second. Oh, wait. Sorry. We have to take a brief intermission.
We need to win the war. We need everybody on board and supporting us and win the war and join your Powers Brigade and blah, blah. Okay. Yeah. If you move this up and all of these tensions, which are real and which do, as soon as you're no longer fighting the Germans in northern France, do turn into an Irish Civil War. If these tensions set off early in spring of 1914, Britain is not part of the alliance system. And it is busy. It may well be busy putting down a full-fledged insurrection in Ireland, where half of its military may be on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm reminded a little bit of the Cinco de Mayo episode we did. I promise I could bring everything back to everything, and it's beautiful. Because the United States had the Monroe Doctrine, not allowing European powers to intervene in the Americas. But when you're in the middle of a civil war, you get distracted. That's kind of what you're more thinking about. So Belgium's sovereignty is probably not that important to Great Britain if they don't have the army to do anything, because they don't know which side their army's on.
Yes. It's like, we don't really care.
I mean, we will send strongly worded notes. We will tell Germany that they're being very, very naughty, and we wish they wouldn't. But that's the extent of what
we will shake
doing.
our finger at them.
Yes.
But that is all.
So the British Army is busy in Mayo, not Mons.
Yes.
And what does that do? Because if you don't have a professional force that you can drop into the continent and very quickly stem somewhat the German plan, the German Schlieffen plan, what very likely happens if Britain is otherwise employed?
Otherwise engaged.
Yeah. What? Yeah.
Things aren't going well on the continent. I will tell you that for sure.
I mean, depends upon like which side.
Well, it depends on which side you're on.
You're rooting for, yeah.
If you're Germany, it's going great.
It's going great because you probably take Paris. Schlieffen plan probably works.
Oh yeah. Because I
And
mean, did we talk about this on podcast or off podcast? Not only do you have British soldiers, dropping into the continent, you also have British soldiers that train other country soldiers. But if they're otherwise occupied,
what other countries? The thing is, the core of the British military is able to get there quickly enough.
Yep.
Training doesn't need training. Training is important in 1915 and 1916 when you have had time to grow your armies. The fact that the British have a professional force that can be in the continent in a matter of weeks, because that's what it is. It's less than a month between their entry into the war and the Battle of Mons.
Yeah.
It's quick. There's no time to train anybody.
True.
But the fact that they have a professional force that they can put in quickly probably saves Paris.
Yes. Schlieffen plan works.
Schlieffen plan works. Wow. That's a big one.
That is weird to think about the Germans holding Paris in World War One.
Go on, talk about that a little bit.
It's just it's a very when I think of that, I think of World War II in my head. And so
I'm also kind of like, how many times have we actually on this podcast made that happen? We've made that happen a couple of times. Really should be used to it by now.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. It's just weird.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So World War One turns out different, probably.
I think a little more than probably.
I mean, it does. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. At this point, they're able, of course, to go east and settle the Russian hash.
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine probably is an independent puppet state, just like after Brest-Litovsk.
Yeah.
I promise she can see my screen. I don't have the world news up, and I'm trying to tick off things. I will talk. I do want to talk about the Dominion status and its effect on Sri Lanka.
We're just going. This is such a mirror. This is such a mirror episode.
Everything is everything.
It is. So, question.
Yeah.
If
you're bringing it back to Ireland, right?
Well, not really.
Okay.
Does this hasten? Does World War One go all the way to 1918? Because I don't think it needs to if you have Britain out of the picture.
In no way does it go to 1918. They might be home by Christmas.
I was going to say, so when does it end? This might actually be the time that we have the war end by Christmas.
I think that's a distinct possibility. Maybe not only because of Russia, but in the West, it's over by Christmas.
That's interesting to think about, because this war was the war that everybody said, oh, this is nothing. We'll be home by Christmas. 4 years later. Well, I think we just figured out a way to end the war by Christmas, but the world looks very different than what we know today.
Well, again, I'm going to be a stickler here. We ended it in the West.
Yes. Okay. We ended it in the West by Christmas.
The French are whatever, but Germany needs to use every single one of those soldiers from France to
they go east
as soon as they're done with France.
Yep.
So they're not home by Christmas.
No. Okay.
They get leave.
France is done by Christmas.
They get leave on the way home to the West for Christmas. But the war probably goes maybe 1916.
I think that's reasonable. Yeah.
Just because I just finished up Dan Carlin's Russian Revolution podcast. The capacity for suffering and just putting up with it is amazing. And just the sheer size of Russia, the sheer size of, let me be very clear now, the Russian Empire as constituted in 1914.
Okay.
Including Poland, the Baltics, Belarus, Ukraine. You can fight for 2 years and not hit what is Russia today.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings up really interesting things, which I kind of don't want to chase, but I'm open to. What does this do to Russia? Because
let's chase those woodland creatures.
Okay. Is the Tsar overthrown? Can the Tsar make a deal? Because again, what leverage is he going to have? You know, when you think about what wound up happening in our timeline, one, the Germans had gotten desperate enough to infect Russia with Bolshevism.
Yes.
Knowing full well which way the winds blew and that they could be dealing with it themselves someday. But they would rather take Russia out of this war. I don't think they get to that level. But I also am sitting here thinking, if France is settled, Brest-Litovsk happens because the Germans, in their own way, need peace in the East so that they can do what we just talked about, send all these troops back to France. If there's not a motivation for Germany to settle, what do they wind up taking? And you know, I honestly think I'm gonna call it wise leader, which Wilhelm is not. I'll say that.
It's a bad idea when cousins marry.
Mm-hmm. I'll say that. You know, maybe does something similar to Brest-Litovsk solely because that's what they look at the East and realize this is what we can digest.
Yeah, that was honestly kind of the first thing that popped in my head. Was that, yeah.
With one addendum, or one really interesting addenda, the eastern border of the Ukrainian state.
Where are you putting that border?
That's a good question. That's a question that is kind of triggering what we're dealing with right now.
See current events.
Because that border was drawn by the Germans to include Russian ethnic areas because they had coal and steel deposits.
Mm-hmm.
Azovstal is kind of why the border is where it was. Maybe that border is different. And everything after that is different. Yeah. But then again, Germany drawing the border wherever they want, you know what they'll do? Take it to the Caspian and then get Baku.
Yeah. So
because again, southern Russia's not exactly a place that like welcomes the honor of being part of Russia.
No, not really.
Um, so that, yeah, but I want to do this. I can't believe I'm having this discussion with you, Alexis. But let's get back to the British Isles where we started. You got me into Russia, and like,
You're stretching my horizons. It's fine, Chris.
Okay. Yeah. What while Europe is just in flames,
Yeah, on fire.
what does this mean in primarily Ireland? What kind of settlement or what happens here? Is this one of those things, even in our timeline, the Germans play footsie with the Irish nationalist?
Yes. It's that whole enemy of my enemy is my friend thing.
If they're in open rebellion, in other words, controlling certain areas, do the Germans lend more material support just to keep the British occupied?
Oh, that's an interesting idea.
Because no matter what, and this is touched on something for a future topic that we talked about a little bit. Britain kind of wanted to be involved with France and Russia. They wanted to, like, their proclivities were there. They obviously do not want anybody controlling the channel from, Le Havre to Hamburg. They don't want that.
No.
The settlement that Germany imposes on France is probably going to look very much like that. Britain has nothing they can do about it. But as Germany, and especially, thinking about Wilhelm, God, he liked sticking his nose into stuff. He may have had a Habsburg nose, or the chin, but he liked getting it into stuff. We did an episode on him picking a fight over the Boer War. They actually did get involved in the Irish nationalists, the whole SEAL train to Finland Station. I definitely think. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, Germany. If we've got a fight going on in Britain, and Ireland is in control of areas,
we have a fight going on in the British Isles, not in Britain.
Okay, British Isles. If we have a fight going on in the British Isles and Ireland is in control of territories, Germany is definitely supplying supplies and troops to them. Well, maybe not troops because they are a little occupied, but they're definitely supplying support.
This may actually be one of those. I'm thinking about a couple of things here. First, how do I'm going to call them the settled dominions react to this? The Anzacs and Canada. Are they, when the Empire goes to war with Germany, the British Empire goes to war with Germany, they're 100% on board.
Oh, yeah.
How's that going to play in Nova Scotia? How's that going to play in other areas? I mean, I mentioned this. How's that going to play in Boston? How is that going to play in areas where you have large Irish diasporas? Do the political elite of those countries use this similarly to the way they were able to use Gallipoli as an excuse to push dominion status and more devolution of their own home rule status?
Oh, yes.
But what is their relation to the armed conflict?
Like, you mean are they sending things? Are they
Are they
just
or are they? How many of the and by the way, I know this is a stereotype, but how many of the convicts shipped to Australia were actually Irish?
Oh, I'm sure a fair amount.
How many of these, again, these areas have populations that you can't, this is not what they want to get involved in. They want to use this as an excuse to define their own national identity, but they're very afraid of the queen call or the king calling them to the colors for this.
Yes.
Because that's going to create more problems at home for them.
Right. It's are you more loyal to country or nationality?
And define country.
Country of residence.
Where you live is in a country. It might be a dominion. It might be a
Territory.
yes.
Okay, place of residence.
And what is the definition of your place of residence's identity?
Right.
All of these things. So it may be that it's Britain versus Ireland as opposed to Britain and Canada and Australia and New Zealand and South Africa and India and Sri Lanka. And the
list goes on.
Yes. So it may be just a British operation with foreign support.
Yeah, that suddenly makes Britain look very small.
But it's very realistic. They go from half the world to
a tiny island, yes.
Britain today.
Yeah.
Less than Britain today, because to just say this, what happens?
You think Scotland leaves?
No, I'm saying what happens in Ulster.
Ah.
If you have armies moving across Ireland, I think this becomes an all or nothing. And they don't accept partition.
We don't do halfsies. Not even halfsies.
They don't do
it's
halfsies.
Like, it's
quartersies. Was it
1/8sies?
Maybe.
Ulster's very small.
Yeah, but so that's it. You may have an Irish state, an Irish republic coming into being a good 10 years sooner. Because, by the way, here's the other thing to throw in there. I threw out something, but in the American lead up to involvement in the First World War, there was a lot of dissent in the United States. There were a lot of people that may not have wanted us on the other side. There were some that wanted us there. Yeah. Go to Charlestown right now and mention that. But there's large populations in the United States. There's always been a diaspora population in the United States that has supported the cause of Irish independence.
Yes.
What does that do? Does the United... I don't see formal involvement.
No. I think it's too spread out. It's too much of a diaspora for that. If that makes sense.
Okay. But you definitely have volunteers. You definitely have supplies. You definitely have
financial support.
Do you have financial support? The reason I'm asking that is that, thinking about America at this point, the financial interest were anglicized.
That's true.
The German and Irish workers were on the other side, but the people making the decisions were large, like, okay, not to put too fine of a point on it, but like you had the argument that the Morgans and the financial interest gave the loans to Britain because that was still kind of their side. When you had a lot of Americans to talk about what you were saying, like, and how do we define what American interests are?
You're right.
So I don't know if it's financial, but now that we're talking about that, let's talk about this. The City of London. British spending on the First World War, it made Wall Street.
Yes.
Go.
Oh, man. So we're just totally dismantling the American financial system now.
Are we dismantling the American financial system, or are we maintaining the world financial system as it existed in 1913?
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
The United States had its capital markets, had Wall Street, it existed, but it wasn't the center of the world.
Right.
The way London was. That the war changed that.
So we
This is what happens when you try and drag me into the British Isles. I start coming up with this stuff. And being persnickety about the difference between Great Britain and Britain.
Yeah, that too. So does London stay the financial powerhouse that it is?
And by the way, let's go ahead and throw in the question of what happens with their markets in Europe.
Oh, they're all out of whack.
So
well,
yeah.
Yeah, they are.
So do you have kind of it's interesting to think about this leading to kind of its own version of Brexit. Britain being cut out of the European financial system, which, by the way, an Irish state is definitely going to participate in.
Right.
Because they've already got shipments full of Mausers coming in. They might as well send something back on those ships. So where's the backstop?
Your guns.
Where's the backstop? We're already talking about what does this do to the Dominion, the Empire. Now, if European markets are a little more closed to Britain, does that strengthen the kind of colloquial ties with the other dominions? In other words, listen, we'll give you political, but we're going to maintain our trading relationships so that we can keep the financial dominance that we currently have.
I mean, I think it has to. Britain doesn't like losing its stuff. I know it loses its stuff a lot.
It doesn't lose
like
it.
It
gave it away.
Stuff.
It gave it away. The latest iteration, it gave it away. Yeah.
They don't like losing their stuff, even though they lose their stuff a lot.
Yeah.
So I think they have no choice but to go the colloquial route of
the collegial route.
Yes.
Yeah. We're the first among equals, but we're going to devolve this and let you guys do your own thing.
Right. It's on paper.
Okay. Yeah. Gee, what other kind of implications of moving Irish home rule literally a couple of months come to mind? Like, we just destroyed the world. According to you, we destroyed the world financial system. I'm kind of like, well, we just maintained what was. Yeah.
It just made it look dramatically
Yeah.
different than what we're used to.
Than what we're used to, but somewhat similar to what there was.
I mean, I kind of mentioned this. I'm curious what this does to, and we've kind of talked around this. We've mentioned Braveheart a couple times. I'm interested what this does to Scotland. I mean, if we're thinking recent history, and it's happened before. I mean, one comedian who it's John Oliver, for those of you that listen to John Oliver. John Oliver did a piece on his show, and John Oliver's British. He is English.
Really?
But yes.
I thought he was Welsh.
No.
I'm kidding.
No. But he did a piece when Scotland was voting for independence, and he referred to the relationship England and Scotland have with each other as a arranged marriage. That has been somewhat tenuous for the last 300 years. So I'm interested what moving home rule up does to the relationship between Scotland and Ireland, because
Scotland and Ireland, or Scotland and England?
Scotland and England. Scotland and Ireland too.
Because that's also interesting, because you do have, largely, if what we said is true and the Free State nationalists are not willing to accept Ulster as are not willing to allow the partition of Ireland into Ulster being either its own thing or something else, you're going to have a lot of Scots
that are stuck.
No. They're going to get themselves unstuck pretty freaking quick. And they're going to be showing up in Manchester. And I know Manchester's in England, but they're going to be showing up there to get jobs there. The dock workers from Belfast are going to be coming to Britain in general, let's say. You're going to have a refugee issue.
Definitely.
Yeah. What I think is, thinking about Scotland as, by the way, very important to, also to the settler dominions. Canada, Australia, New Zealand. I think Scotland may be given similar status to Ottawa.
Okay.
In that basically, because we did talk about Great Britain having to reevaluate that relationship between at least itself and its settler dominions. And I keep saying it's settler dominions, being, I don't want to put too fine a point on it, but I'm going to put a fine point on it. The European places that like British people went to and started living, rather than India, rather than the African possessions, other than South Africa, which Britain is not ready to give political devolution to. But they would, I think, because I'm thinking about the Dominion Conference of 26.
Okay.
They do devolve some powers there. And I think they're kind of like, well, listen, we need to do this. We need to develop that collegial relationship. Also, I think people that argue for Brexit said Britain could become a free trading bastion off the coast of government interventionist Europe. Where's Adam Smith from?
He'd be from Scotland.
That's a very Scottish argument.
Mm-hmm.
And it is interesting to picture the SNP breaking away over that issue. But I think at this point, especially, Scotland is not pushing for devolution at this point. They're
No.
not really trying for anything. I think this is almost a matter of Westminster giving them power. Please take this off our plate.
We're getting proactive about this. Just here.
We're getting ahead of the curve. Sure.
You'll want this at some point, so we're just going to give it to you.
And so maybe you kind of have a situation of London becoming like an imperial parliament where the Commonwealth actually means something. It can't, like the Commonwealth determines a common defense policy. The Navy is very important now if you've got these people all over the world.
Yes.
It always has been, but I think maybe a Dominion Navy or a Commonwealth Navy might be in order.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's interesting in terms of future war involvement.
With who?
Well, I don't know, because we totally blew the whole
Yeah, we did.
Germany needing a second World War thing. So
a revanchist France or Japan?
That's interesting.
That's the other.
Also see current events.
Yeah, well, okay. What haven't I touched? I had a really good discussion about Abenomics, but yeah, why were they all afraid of Abe? Because he was kind of cool with what Japan had done in the 20s and 30s. That leads to a natural clash with maybe see, here's the other interesting thing. This is the one thing. Japan, as soon as the war starts, is able to jump on all those German Pacific possessions because Germany can't do anything about it.
Right.
I'm gonna modify something you said. Britain doesn't like giving stuff. Nobody likes giving stuff away. So go ahead and talk to me about a situation where Germany is like in charge of Europe, but somehow they're okay signing away Tsingtao. Right? So,
sorry, we just got a massive thunderclap outside, and my dog does not like thunder.
It's okay. Yeah. So that's an interesting, but okay. Let's put that aside and say at some point Britain gets involved fighting with somebody because it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. So get back and talk a little bit about what you were thinking about.
Well, just if we have this continental or not Commonwealth, armed forces.
Yeah.
We talked about Navy, but let's say Army too.
I honestly don't know about that part of it just because by the nature of the Commonwealth, the Navy makes sense.
The Navy does make sense. I mean, it's literally all over the world.
And the other thing is I don't see, like, I'm kind of picturing again that situation of a Canada being like, we're not going to merge armies with you because we made it a point to stay out of Ireland.
So we're not going to start now.
We're not. Let's think about South Africa. They share land borders with probably Germany at this point.
Yes.
German colonies who, German Congo or things like that. I have to imagine the Commonwealth states are going to want to maintain their ability to decide if they maintain their flexibility on that. While the Navy, they need to.
Yes.
There's a good argument there.
Yeah. No, the Navy definitely needs to.
But, you're going to have, I think that might be your Second World War there. Maybe it starts in Africa.
Natural place.
Really interesting thing to think about. Like if Germany actually builds up its African colonies, thinking about the role of South Africa in the First World War.
Mm.
Yeah. That could be a really, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's so weird to think about Germany having African colonies.
Which they did in our timeline. They definitely did. Right up to South Africa.
Yep.
Yeah. Couple of months made a big difference, didn't it?
We kind of blew the world up. Just by moving that little thing like 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have no Second World War. Well, no Second World War in
any way we recognize it.
Correct.
And I'll just leave it at that. I still think we found out a place it might happen. Like, not to sound Orwellian, but it's like when you have super states bordering each other, stuff's going to happen.
Good.
Stuff's going to happen.
When you have super states bordering each other, and to allude to something you mentioned earlier, when you have people drawing arbitrary and random borders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that as well. We didn't even talk about what that border is going to look like.
Nope.
Over there. Yeah. Man, 2 months. 3 months. Crazy.
And this whole time I've had Downton Abbey in my head. Did you ever watch?
I have somewhat as well, but I'm gonna let you share your thought on it.
Well, I have a specific part of Downton Abbey. I have
Tom.
Yes, I have Tom where he's escaping Ireland and having to get back to the house in the rain.
Yeah.
I have that scene in my head where they're having to run because they're being chased.
By who?
By the police.
Yeah. By the settlers. I'm sorry. The whole time I'm rooting for Tom. Like, get him out. They got no business over there.
No, I don't know why they went in the first place. Because they really had no business over there.
Because they're British. It's what they do. I in my head now I'm picturing like a video montage of how many times John Oliver has said something almost exactly like that. Yeah, you're not thinking about Downton Abbey anymore, are you? No.
Now I have another John Oliver bit in my head.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, how he won't explain what's going on in Ireland just because of his accent. Yep, and he shouldn't. Too soon.
Gonna stay away from that one.
Too soon.
Little too soon.
It's gonna be too soon for a while. So, do you have any other thoughts, or are we just gonna keep talking about pop culture references?
We'll just put all these pop culture references in the notes. It's fine.
Yeah, we can do we'll do an addenda.
I think I have nothing else, but okay, this is not where I expected to be.
Isn't it? No, it's fun.
I did not expect that moving home rule was going to completely change the Second World War, but it did.
And really, really plausibly too. That's the other weird thing that you're like, this isn't
far-fetched at all.
No.
Like, we're not reaching. This is just, yes. The World War II does not happen.
This is something like, literally the Irish Home Rule Bill not getting caught up in this committee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, your T wasn't crossed.
Sure.
Well, we've completely destroyed the world as we know it.
Or maintained it. I'm still fighting over that financial system thing.
You are right. We just maintained the financial system pre.
Now, we did rebuild
1914.
Napoleon's continental system and just switched to Germany. I'll give him that much. That's we never touched. But
No.
yeah.
Not
Yeah.
touching.
Yeah. Okay. Man. We got to end this. So I'm just
Yeah.
going to cut it.
Hey, but this was a fun one.
Don't you think?
This was I like doing episodes with you, Chris. This was fun. This wasn't the episode we planned on doing when we got on the Zoom call, but this was fun.
Yeah. It's I feel like this, you know what? Maybe we could release like an anthology just entitled The Spanish Inquisition Episodes. And it has nothing to do with the Spanish Inquisition. It's just that nobody expects it. So I'm filling in while you work through that one. If you should come to a fork in the road, though, what should somebody do, Alexis?
I think they should take it.
Thanks for being with us on this one, and we're gonna hopefully get back to some more regular episodes coming out.
I will second Chris on that one. I was kind of giving him a little insight off podcast, but we're trying, guys. Believe me, we're all trying to get on a more
also, let's just say this, right? Like this episode, I've been able to pack in so many news references that you know,
this was very timely, which again we did not plan.
Not at all.
So this worked out.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are trying to get on a more regular scheduled programming recording schedule. Please bear with us, guys. Life has been a little hectic, but believe us, we like recording together. It's just finding time to do it right now is a little hairy, but we're working on it. So
all right. This is Chris and Alexis signing off.
Were you going for my name?
I was like, do I want to do Shelly? How?
You know what? I'm gonna hang on. Everybody, I'm changing it on
in the Zoom
as we speak.
Well, it's also like, you know, this is your name. Like, are you doing hyphenated or you keep, you know?
Nope.
Okay. Raleigh. So this is Chris.
It has been changed in Zoom. Everybody in the audience. It is official. I am Zoom official now. Forget about the driver's license. That's not where it matters. Zoom.
Zoom
is the official.
Zoom is the official.
All right.
All right, everyone. And I'm going to ask her not to look at her picture right now because I did Zoom. I definitely just renamed her just to mess with her. See you guys next time.
Bye, Chris.
Thanks for listening to A Fork in Time, the alternate history podcast. Learn more and provide feedback by visiting our website at www.aforkintimepodcast.com. Connect to us on Facebook at facebook.com/aforkintime or follow us on Twitter at AFIT Podcast. If you want to support the show financially, visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/aforkintime. We hope you will join us next time.